Okay, so I didn't fall off the little chair last time, so they've given me an opportunity to try again. So, as everyone knows, I'm Solitaire, which is a ridiculous name in every language, not just French. And I'm the person who swore in a previous session. But we're here to talk about stories, we're here to talk about youth, we're here to talk about engagement. So you three have the kind of relationship with millennials and with young people around the world that many of the brands in this room would envy. They envy the kind of relationships that you get to have with new and upcoming generations and consumers. And so I'm going to ask you each very briefly just to introduce yourselves, and then I've got some questions about what's changing about storytelling and about sustainability. So, Stephen, let's start with you. Who are you, Stephen?
Thank you, Solly. I'm co-founder and CEO of Rockcorps. And to tell you the Rockcorps story, we've got to go back in time a bit first. So it was September 10th, the exact day, I remember it, because you'll understand it from the next part of the story. And I had just finished graduate school and I was interviewing for a job on Wall Street, very misplaced. It was September 10th, 2001. The next morning I woke up, I had really nailed the interview, I was a little bit hungover, and there were all these sirens going off around New York City. The Twin Towers were about to fall down. And my friends and I, we walked as close as we could down to ground zero. We were thinking, maybe we could help. Turns out there were no survivors of that day. You either made it out or you didn't, but a lot of people walking back uptown with ash on them, or dust. And it left a real impression these next couple days in New York City. The city was so calm and quiet. There were no horns honking. New York was so different, people connecting with each other. And then it went back to normal a few days later. But my friends and I wanted to do something around that moment where people were connected. And we thought about doing a music benefit concert. And by the way, that job that I interviewed disappeared. No one really knew what was going on. There wasn't even a Wall Street for a couple of weeks, and that was a lucky miss on my part for my life. But we wanted to do a benefit concert, but not the traditional way, because the traditional way of doing music benefit concerts is get some big name bands, charge a lot of money for tickets, take the ticket money and give it over to a nonprofit to do good work. We thought that really missed out on young people who wanted to be a part of that social change through music. So we had this idea, which was, instead of money, what if people gave time, and in exchange for the time, they got a ticket to a gig? And so we thought no one's ever done that before. Maybe we can get a brand, a corporate partner, to pay for it all. Problem was, none of us had ever sold a sponsorship before. A couple years later, we figured that out. We rented out Radio City Music Hall in New York City. We organized about 75 different community projects around the 5 boroughs, working with local nonprofits. So doesn't matter. So it could be education, homeless shelters, food banks, whatever the community needed. And if you came down, if you're 14 years old and up, you came down, did 4 hours of work, we gave you a ticket to the gig. Huge hip-hop concert in Radio City. It worked, roughly. There was a few turbulent bumps there. And since then, we've taken it around the world. We've been to 10 different cities in France. We've been to Latin America, Australia, South Africa, and our latest country is Japan. So that's Rockcorps.
Brilliant. And I've been to a Rockcorps concert. It is amazing. All these young people who have actually given back, then feeling that they're getting the return. It's amazing. So that's really hands-on. You're literally there. You've got thousands of screaming kids who feel that they've achieved something. But there's also, of course, the online world, the less physical world where we're not actually at a concert, where we're watching Coachella by video. So Lucie, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Definitely less physical. Konbini is my company. We launched it a few, I would say 10 years ago. At the time, we were trying, because actually we have a passion about music and so on, and we just definitely, our first step was about music and promoting the artists that could not be seen on traditional medias and stuff like that. And we thought that internet, they were present on internet, but they didn't have the filter and the big media companies that the big media companies and creative one could offer. So we launched this media. At the time, there was no social networks, or almost not, or not for media at least. And it began slowly, really slowly, until Facebook launched like this new media thing with you can broadcast video on it and so on. And then it grew more and more massive. And with the growing of this audience, we felt a little less comfortable about not being responsible with this role, and we try to engage more and more, and to find more and more voices and faces and people, engaging them and inspiring people, and we talked more and more about like environment or like war or like the thing that was emotionally concerning us, but our audience obviously as well. And then this media became more and more like about impact and about story that try to impact actually. So this is Konbini.
Thank you, Lucie. We're going to come back in a moment to asking about what's changing around these initiatives. But as a massive Assassin's Creed fan, I'm very pleased to welcome Xavier. Please introduce yourself, although I may have just sort of introduced you.
Well, contrary to my esteemed colleague, I'm not a founder of Ubisoft in any way. I've been with the company for 22 years, going on 23. I'm just a cog in the machine, and but I've seen video games grow from something that was, you know, more often than not frowned upon as corrupting the new generations, and we've seen it progressively grow into something that has become more and more of some kind of legitimate media, something that was a media that was able to say something on the world we live in. Just about what I do within Ubisoft, I'm part of the editorial team. My title is Senior Creative Partner, which absolutely says nothing. And one of my dreaded moment is whenever I have to fill a form where they ask what is my job, and basically the short way is that we help our production teams to create universes and characters, which is quite fantastic and very humbling at the same time.
Brilliant. So those universes, those characters are what millions, indeed billions of us are now engaged in every day. So in terms of an industry, you have a huge industry. So we've got the industry around putting not-for-profit together with music, the industry about content generation for young people, and the industry of gaming. So all of you have got thousands, millions and billions of young people every day that you work with who are engaging with your content. And we often talk about youth culture as if it's a sort of moment in time. This is what the millennials want, or this is what the Gen Zs want. But of course, that's not what it is. And particularly right now, we're in a moment of change. So from all of your interactions, this is your job, is to understand this. What is changing at the moment in youth culture? What stories are changing? I'll come to Stephen.
Well, I'm going to name three things that have changed, because as you know, it's not a moment in time, so it's hard to just pick one. The first is around music, and that is really sad for me to say that rock and roll is dying. I'm sorry to tell you that, but for someone who grew up on Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and the Grateful Dead, and these are the soundtrack of my youth, of course it's not going to disappear, but it'll become much more of a niche. Of the over 100 artists we've had on our shows, probably less than 10% are of a rock genre, right? So rock and roll will kind of go the way of jazz and LP and vinyl. So it'll be there, but it'll be classic. So that's one. The second, with young people, and these are observations around the world, I don't know how much it's a change, but it's more a realization where these distinctions, and as we talk at Sustainable Brands in Paris, these distinctions between sort of non-profit, good social change and brand shareholder return, maybe not so good. That doesn't exist in the mind of our audience, and it was really the young people that led us to that understanding. So we're completely sponsor brand partner driven. We did our first event, first year in New York. We thought, how much should we weave the commercial message around with a social change message? We need to be really careful of that because these are distinct. moment. And it was really it was the young people. So they would come and they would ask, okay, who's going to play at the gig? Are there any surprises? And then the next question would be, tell me about the brand. Do I get any discounts? Is there a free product? And they really wanted to have a conversation with the brand because they were so excited to be interacting that way. So that was the young people leading us there. Do we need to break in for hacktivists?
No.
Okay.
If you've got a third.
And my third thing is hit the brands themselves. So when we first started doing this work, we're not a nonprofit, we're a shareholder-owned company, and people would say, why aren't you a nonprofit? You ostensibly do good things, right? So there was this whole division that if you do good, you have to be a nonprofit. That's all gone now, and there's this understanding, I think, although it's slowly, and we need it to accelerate if we're gonna have a chance here, is that you as a company can do both and, not either or. There isn't your sustainability CSR strategy or your commercial sponsorship music festival. These are the same things, both and that's been a real change.
Brilliant, thank you. Can I just let Lucie answer that question, because I know that she had a great point, or should we go straight to the youth? Oh, let's go, honestly, we've got a whole load of Gen X's talking about young people.
Yeah, we're going to interrupt. And also
ask
because I think this question is actually for Lucie, and it's pertinent in this. The question is, how do you select between what's trendy and what's truly aligned with your values and your audience's values?
Actually, people who write in Konbini, people who shoot Konbini's programs and stuff like that are the ones who are watching them, and more as well the one we are talking about, because young people are more and more like in media companies, like in young media companies like us, but they are also activists, and they are like, it's all about the same generation and the same community. So I would say it's a conversation between what people in Konbini who are working in Konbini are, and the ones who are watching, and the ones who are making the news, actually. But it's the same community. So I think this trend is like really blurred, you know.
Does that answer your question? Okay,
Brilliant.
thank you.
Also, ask more questions. I've got a sore throat and I'm old. Young people ask more questions. I'm going to ask a question. Oh, no, please, no. Answer the question about changing, please.
Yeah, sorry, but I wanted to give my experience about the young people, because 10 years, it's a lot, you know, it moves a lot in 10 years, and I really feel the connection with them, I really feel the evolution, you know. And for that moment, we definitely feel that the kids of today have a superpower, which is influence. They are born with it. They don't even know that it used not to exist only for lobbies or only for young people. It was once upon a time, but for them, they were 10, and they knew what was influence. They knew what was an influencer, and more than that, they know how to do it. Better than everyone here, I guess. So I think this really superpower is the big thing that had changed for the 3 or 4 years past. And we definitely see it every day, at least on Konbini.
Brilliant, thank you. So, Xavier, computer games, blowing shit up, chopping the heads off zombies, or maybe like trying to get different candies in a row to release pieces. Is there any role for sustainability in the storytelling that you guys do in computer games?
Well, that's very radical simplification of what video games can be about.
Deliberately so.
Yeah, we definitely hope we're doing something different. Just to get back to the evolution of the way the young people are experiencing video games, we're obviously very grounded in technology, and the fact that technology is now ever present, and that basically people can access our games almost constantly. Well, that's for us both a challenge and an opportunity, because we can bring out games that are much larger than they used to be. We strive to make living worlds where people can experience over longer time the worlds we put out. And it's a challenge because obviously there's a lot of content to produce. It's an opportunity also because it allows us to put in action what is the Ubisoft mission statement, which is enrich our players' lives And the idea is to let them learn stuff, bring something from their experience in this game. It's not just about blowing things up, but it's often understanding why there's this context where people are just, getting at war, or just understanding how things may be working this way and not that way. So it's really about giving out some kind of a view on the world, and not educating them, but getting them bring back something from the game.
So, and I'm sorry that I just couldn't help it, but being as I am actually a gamer myself, I know the world building is very complex. So at the moment, we have the youth climate strikes. So Greta is currently in the UK, hopefully really, really pushing my government. And around the world, we have young people who are rising up. And I read a really interesting piece of work by a young person to say, hey, we were weaned on Harry Potter. We were raised on all these stories of young heroes overturning injustice, of Katniss up against the negative. In terms of young people trying to find their power to change the world, young people themselves not being audience, but being hero of a change, how much of a desire are you seeing from young people to actually be the hero, not the follower?
To be true, I think there is one word which is really key in this movement, and I think, of course, it's obviously hyper interesting. At Konbini, we are covering the marches and like live covers and stuff like that, so we meet them. And what I like the most, and I would say it's the big difference with here today and what I hear from the brands and stuff like that, it's the now. Compared to, for instance, the 2021 or 2020 or 2025, and compared to the politics as well. So I think this there would be a huge disappointment, sorry, if we are not able to give them an answer for now. So we have to be careful, all of us, not to watch them passively and promise something for later on. So it's really, they can't wait. Everything for them, everything is direct, everything is live, everything is spontaneous, and we have to take their rhythm. That's my...
Yeah, we also see it in the way they react to the stories we put out. We had something that was fairly unexpected for us with our last Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is set in ancient Greece, and in which we allowed the player to choose whether or not he was going to play as Alexios, a male character, or Cassandra, a female character. And the idea in the game is that the ancient Greece society was fairly open as it came to relationships, and that was something that we want to carry through in the game. And basically, you could date whomever you wanted, regardless of whether you had chosen Alexios or Cassandra, which meant that Alexios could have a steamy love affair with Alcibiades, a Greek heir to one of the noble families of Athens, but also having some lesbian romance between Cassandra and a female character. And we had a huge positive return on that. People really embraced that so much that in a later story, we had some story that kind of forced Cassandra to go back to the heteronormal kind of thing with having a kid, because that's part of the Assassin's Creed lore. And we had an incredible backlash in there. And we realized that what we had done was awkward, and so we tried to correct that. But basically, that's also understanding that it's also for us, I think there's a lot of coming to grasp to the power, this kind of soft power we have. You know, we've grown up as knowing that it was just video games, and all of a sudden, it's also, we are the first who have to realize that, no, it's not just video games, it can be much more.
Beautiful. I know we've got another question.
Yeah, and it's actually exactly on that point, because it's not just video games. This question is for Xavier. So how would you describe your responsibility towards the younger audiences and the young audiences, particularly through your games and the values that you want to bring out in those games and you want to convey?
Well, as I was saying, we are recreating worlds, and we often recreate worlds that are inspired by the real world. And in order to do that, we have a saying, we have to go smell the grass. So we take our teams out of their office, we take them away from the computer, and we bring them to the place we want them to recreate. And the idea is to have them the best experience that we can. So we hire fixers, we hire experts there, and so they go there and they get to experience what it is. Just to go back to on Odyssey, we took a team who was in Quebec in March, in the middle of winter there, and we took them to Greece in March. And so they went from Quebec, where it was below zero and freezing, and they came to Greece in March, where it was full spring. And what's interesting is that they had this idea of Greece of being always under a glaring sun with, you know, the yellowed grass and just the olive trees and something very harsh. And all of a sudden they saw this lush life with butterflies and flowers and being in those places and seeing the might of the Acropolis. When you're there, you walk around Athens, it's hovering over the city always. And that's the kind of thing that you don't get by looking on Google Map and Google Photos and just trying to get a grasp. So by getting our people, to carry a message on the world we live in, we have to experience stuff before. And that's why we take our teams there and we go there and try to smell the grass, to experience what it is to be in the world.
I think go and smell the grass is a great argument for many of us, not just in terms of natural environments, but social environments as well, to actually understand our audiences. So we've just got a moment left. So every day you interact with the audiences that many of the brands in this room really want to interact with. What one piece of advice would you have for those brands here who want to engage with young audiences? Stephen?
I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to go back to Xavier's statement about the changes in the programming and the way that you can manipulate the characters and so forth. And it's really important to understand, as you think inside your product and brand positioning departments, that sort of behavior change and that expression and communication isn't happening because Ubisoft programmed their games differently. It's the opposite. The behavior changed in youth culture, and Ubisoft has to follow. So I think this is very important for us to understand where the locus of control is, and through that, you've come how to set the game up differently. And the climate strikes that you spoke about in the UK, so these Friday walkouts from mostly high school students in the UK to protest climate change, there was a big kind of debate about whether the government should allow that or not allow it, and there was a big movement among sort of the youth leader clique to say, oh, we should write a letter to the Minister of Education to say, oh, this is an excused absence. It's like, I don't want any part of that. Like, why would it then become an approved absence from school by the Minister of Education? That's not doing our young people. It's called a protest people, and they should be knocked down for being absent that day. Maybe we'll go out and march with them, but I'm certainly not going to advocate to government that that's an excused absence. So I think that's probably the lesson in brands is very much to be completely open. I think over time we can sometimes think that because the hierarchy of our young people has really flattened, and there's no sort of working your way up anymore of our millennial or Gen Z audiences. There is, I want to have it now. That we can sometimes confuse that with thinking that we need to turn the whole thing over. There still is a real role for wisdom.
Well, quick, one sentence, one piece of learning.
For the brands?
Yes.
I would say that they should, don't fake it. Do it truly, really truly. Do it as if it were for you or for your kids, and do it soon.
Brilliant. Thank you. Xavier?
Well, I'd say don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. Because as a big company, we tend to be very conservative because we want to please as many people as possible. And sometimes going out of the limb, just like I was saying about embracing the diversity of people, sometimes as incredible returns and makes it really worth it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Stephen, Lucie, and Xavier, thank you very much.
Thank you, Solitaire.